What if I told you the first Valyrians who tried to ride dragons died screaming in the 14 flames, with no saddles, no horns, and no gods listening yet? We see the Targaryens bonding with dragons almost effortlessly. Cradle an egg, claim a mount in the Dragonpit, and suddenly you're soaring above Westeros. We watched Daenerys Targaryen walk into fire and emerge with 3 dragons at dawn. But that's the end of the story. The refined version, the salvaged fragment. Today, we're going back 7,000 years before Aegon's conquest, to when Valyria was just a collection of shepherd tribes huddled around volcanic vents, and dragons were wild, untamable forces of destruction that burned everything they touched. This is the era before the dragonlords, the age of failure, blood, and screaming. Welcome to part 1 of our complete series on old Valyrian dragon bonding. I'm your maester at the Black Dread, and by the end of these 3 videos, you'll understand exactly how the greatest empire in history engineered the bond between man and dragon, and why it all died with the doom. Let's set the timeline. We're talking about roughly 7,800 to 7,500 years before Aegon's conquest, in the volcanic peninsula that would become the Valyrian freehold. According to our Valyrian Bible, the complete chronology we've been building on this channel, this is the Genesis period. These weren't the silver-haired sorcerer lords you're picturing. These were desperate survivors living in the shadow of the 14 flames, a chain of volcanoes so violent that the ground itself burned beneath their feet. And in those flames, dragons led. Now, here's where the legends get murky. Septon Barth's writings suggest dragons may have originated in the Shadowlands beyond Ashai, possibly created or altered by ancient blood mages. The Valyrians themselves told competing origin stories. Some claimed dragons were gifts from the gods. Others said they were native to the volcanic vents, birthed directly from fire and stone. What we know for certain, by the time the shepherd tribes encountered them, dragons were already apex predators, massive, intelligent, and utterly indifferent to human authority. The shepherds watched these creatures hunt, nest in volcanic cavities, and bathe in lava like it was water, and they thought, we need to control that. Spoiler alert, it didn't go well. Picture this. The first attempts at dragon taming were brutally simple. Nets, chains, crude saddles made from volcanic glass and twisted metal. The strategy was basically throw enough people at the problem until something works. It never worked. Dragons incinerated the nets before they could close. They melted chains into slag. Would-be riders who managed to mount a dragon's back without any magical bond, without any understanding of dragon behavior, lasted seconds before being thrown into lava fields or simply roasted alive. The early Valyrian settlements were littered with scorched skeletons and melted stone. Every family lost members to these failed attempts, but they kept trying because the potential was too enormous to ignore. A single dragon could reshape a battlefield, destroy a rival tribe, or defend an entire settlement. Control over even one dragon meant survival. Control over many meant dominance. So they kept dying and dying. And you guessed it, dying. But here's where it gets interesting. Over generations, certain families started noticing patterns. Some bloodlines didn't burn as fast. That's the observation that changed everything. Certain families, we're talking about the proto-versions of the 40 families that would later rule Valyria, discovered their children could withstand heat better than others. Not immunity, but resistance. They could approach dragon lairs without immediately catching fire. They could stand closer to the vents where dragons nested. Was this genetic mutation from living in volcanic regions, interbreeding with other populations, or something more magical? The Valyrians themselves believed it was a sign from the gods, a mark that certain bloodlines were chosen to command dragons. Alongside this, some individuals reported prophetic dreams. They'd dream of specific dragons before ever encountering them. They'd see visions of fire and flight, of circling a particular volcanic vent where a dragon was nesting. This is where the dragon-keeping system began to emerge. The early Valyrians started codifying what worked. Egg wardens who tended dragon nesting sites, learning which vents were active and which dragons laid clutches where. Hatchery acolytes who studied dragon behavior, documenting feeding patterns, mating seasons, territorial ranges. Flame marshals who could approach adult dragons without immediately being attacked. Sky learners who attempted limited contact, sometimes succeeding in brief flights before the dragon rejected them. And finally, the bonding trial, the moment when a candidate would attempt to forge a permanent connection with a dragon. This system, which we'll see fully developed in part 2 of this series when we explore the blood magic rites, took centuries to create. It wasn't elegant at first. It was trial and error, written in burn scars and burial mounds. But it was progress. Now, we need to talk about the Valyrian pantheon, because this is where magic and religion fuse into the bonding process after the goddess Tharax raised the 14 flames. According to Valyrian myth, priests began associating each volcanic vent with a specific deity. These weren't just symbolic connections. The Valyrians believed each volcano was a literal gateway to divine power. Valyrian the Black, god of death, oaths, and binding contracts. His flame was used to seal blood oaths and brand sigils onto dragon riders. Tharax, the Forge Mother, goddess of fire, volcanoes, and creation. Her vents were pilgrimage sites where candidates underwent heat trials. Vhagar the Warbringer, goddess of battle and destruction. Warriors seeking combat dragons prayed at her altars. Meraxes the Shadow Dancer, goddess of prophecy and shadows. Meraxes the Shadow Dancer, goddess of prophecy and shadows. Dream quests to connect with dragons were conducted under her aegis. Syrax, the Brood Mother, goddess of fertility and healing. Families seeking gentle household dragons performed rites at her shrines. Therion the Dream Weaver, god of visions and the subconscious. He granted prophetic dreams that showed candidates which dragons they were meant to bond with. Each of these gods represented a different aspect of the dragon bond, and each required different rituals, different offerings, different tests. The Valyrians weren't just trying to physically control dragons anymore. They were seeking divine permission to bond with them. Let me paint you the scene that ends this chapter of history. A young candidate, let's call him from one of the proto-families, maybe an ancestor from House Baelorys, or even House Targaryen, is led to a shrine at the base of the central volcano in the 14 flames. He's undergone the full ladder, tended eggs, studied hatchlings, survived flame trials. He's been fasting for 3 days. His arms are marked with volcanic glass cuts, ritual scarring that will become standard in later bonding rites. He's recited oaths to Valyrian and prayed to Tharaxia for acceptance. The priests lead him into a chamber where superheated air should kill a normal person in minutes, but he walks through it. The flame licks his skin, but doesn't consume him. And in the depths of that cavern, a dragon, maybe a colossus, maybe a proto-stormclaw, watches him approach. The dragon doesn't attack. It lowers its head, smoke curling from its nostrils, and the young man reaches out to touch the scales on its snout. For the first time in Valyrian history, a human and dragon bond by choice. The priests whisper that the gods have accepted him. The dragon will tolerate his presence, allow him to approach, even permit him to ride. It's imperfect, it's unstable, but it's the foundation. Over the next 1,000 years, this rough prototype would transform into something far darker and more powerful. The 40 families that controlled Valyria would develop their own bonding rites, some noble, some horrifying, all rooted in blood magic and divine pacts. In part 2, we're going deep into those secret rituals, the oath fire ceremonies of Valyrian, the volcanic pilgrimages to Tharaxia's vents, the dream cord tests of Therion, the brutal blood sacrifices of House Moraynar, and the sea chain rites of the Wave Runner families. We'll explore how each of the 40 families specialized in different dragon breeds and developed bonding methods specific to those breeds. And we'll trace how Daenerys Targaryen, completely unknowingly, recreated the essential formula of ancient Valyrian blood magic when she walked into Khal Drogo's funeral pyre. Because here's the thing, the dragonlords didn't just have dragons. They engineered the bond with blood, gods, and systematic breeding programs. And after the doom of Valyria destroyed the 14 flames, the world forgot how. Until 3 eggs hatched in Essos, and the Age of Dragons began again. Next we'll discover the dark secrets of Valyrian blood magic and dragon bonding. And if you want to see how they turned this mystical bond into an industrial-scale breeding program, Part 3 covers the engineering side. How Valyria created specialized dragon lines and matched perfect riders to perfect dragons. This is your foundation for understanding everything we'll explore about old Valyria on this channel. The 40 families, the supreme dragons, the wars of the freehold. It all starts here, in fire and failure. I'm your maester at the Black Dread. The doom may have ended Valyria, but their legacy burns eternal. Subscribe, and let's rebuild the empire together.